You're not crazy, and you're not losing your grip on reality. What's happening right now isn't random, and it isn't something you imagined into existence. There's a reason your thoughts feel louder, sharper, and harder to ignore. There's a reason familiar ideas suddenly feel hollow, old patterns feel uncomfortable, and conversations that once made sense now feel strangely distant. This isn't confusion. This is clarity arriving before your identity has fully adjusted to it. Right now, the Sun and Mercury are both activating Aquarius energy at the same time. And even if you don't usually pay attention to astrology, this particular combination doesn't operate on belief. It operates on perception. Aquarius doesn't move through emotion first. It moves through awareness. And when both your sense of self and your thinking process are touched by this energy simultaneously, the mind doesn't stay quiet. It starts asking questions it can't unask. You may have noticed it already, a subtle but persistent feeling that something you once accepted without question no longer sits right. Opinions you used to defend automatically now feel flexible. Beliefs you inherited feel less solid than they once did. You're not abandoning your values, you're examining where they actually came from, and that alone can feel destabilizing if you've never done it before. This is the moment many people mistake awakening for anxiety, because when the mind opens suddenly, it feels like everything is moving at once. Thoughts connect faster, patterns reveal themselves without effort. You start seeing the structure beneath your habits, your reactions, your fears. Aquarius energy is like cold air hitting a hot mirror. The fog clears instantly, and suddenly you see what was always there. Not everyone is ready for that. But if you're feeling it, it's because your mind is capable of holding it. What you're experiencing is mental deconditioning. For most of your life, your thoughts didn't begin with you. They were shaped by your environment, reinforced by repetition, rewarded by approval, and protected by routine. Family beliefs, social expectations, cultural scripts, survival patterns, all absorbed long before you had the awareness to question them. And over time, they felt personal simply because they were familiar. This double Aquarius shift exposes that, not to shame you, not to erase you, but to show you the architecture of your own thinking, to let you see which beliefs were chosen consciously and which were installed quietly. This can feel uncomfortable at first, because once you see the source of a belief, you can't pretend it's unquestionable anymore. But this discomfort is liberation disguised as instability. You're not losing your mind. You're reclaiming it. This is why so many people right now feel like their opinions are rearranging themselves. Aquarius doesn't destroy thought. It disinfects it. It strips away inherited bias, emotional overattachment, and unconscious loyalty to ideas that were never examined. What remains isn't emptiness. It's authenticity. It's your real perspective emerging for the first time without interference. And here's where it gets deeper. As your thinking changes, your identity starts to wobble. You may look at yourself and feel strangely unfamiliar. Old reactions don't come automatically anymore. Habits that once defined you feel forced. You might catch yourself wondering, who am I becoming? And not have an immediate answer. This isn't a breakdown. This is a transition point. You're standing between versions of yourself. You're no longer who you were, but you haven't fully embodied who you're becoming yet. And the in-between always feels strange. The mind has expanded faster than the identity can anchor. That gap creates discomfort, but it's not a flaw. It's sacred instability. It's the clearing that happens before something more aligned takes shape. Aquarius rules the higher mind, the part of you that can step back and observe your life instead of being emotionally trapped inside it. When the Sun and Mercury move through this space together, you experience an internal zoom out. You start seeing your past self as a series of patterns rather than a fixed identity. You notice how much of who you were was shaped by fear, approval, expectation, or survival. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. What you feel right now is not emptiness, it's space. Space where the old self used to be. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe for daily cosmic insights, astrology updates, and spiritual guidance, because the universe always has a message for you. Space that feels unfamiliar because it's no longer crowded with borrowed beliefs. This is what rewriting yourself feels like from the inside. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It happens quietly, steadily, and with unsettling honesty. Another powerful effect of this shift is how sharply your perception of other people changes. You may find yourself listening to conversations differently. You hear not just what people are saying, but where their thoughts are coming from. You start noticing who thinks independently and who repeats ideas they never examined, who speaks from awareness and who speaks from fear. Aquarius heightens mental perception. It lets you see the source code behind people's beliefs. This isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. Once you recognize the difference between conscious and unconscious thinking, you stop taking things personally. You stop expecting depth where it isn't available. You stop forcing conversations that were never meant to meet you where you are now. And in doing so, you begin valuing your own mind more deeply, because you realize how rare true independence of thought actually is. As this awareness grows, something else happens that many people aren't prepared for. Social masks begin to feel heavy. The version of yourself that once adapted easily, agreed politely, or shrank to maintain harmony suddenly feels exhausting. It's not that you're losing social skills, it's that your mind is becoming allergic to pretense. Mercury in Aquarius sharpens communication to the point where half-truths feel physically uncomfortable to express. You can sense when you're about to say something you don't fully believe, and you stop. Fitting in starts to feel like punishment, and standing out starts to feel like relief. This isn't rebellion, it's alignment. Aquarius values authenticity over acceptance. And when your mind prefers truth over approval, something irreversible happens. You begin attracting people who meet you where you actually are, not where you pretended to be. Conversations become fewer but deeper. Silence becomes more comfortable than forced connection. And for the first time, you may feel genuinely uninterested in spaces that once demanded you perform. Alongside this, many people are noticing a sudden acceleration in mental speed. Thoughts connect faster. Insights arrive without effort. You understand things before they're fully explained. While others are still forming opinions, you've already seen the pattern behind them. This isn't anxiety. This is Aquarian cognition. Fast, innovative, analytical, and expansive. Mercury amplifies it, making the mind feel alive, curious, and constantly processing. This contrast can feel isolating at times. You may feel mentally ahead while others seem stuck in old frameworks. But this isn't superiority. It's timing. Your pace isn't a problem. It's a preview of where you're headed. This shift is preparing you for a phase of mental independence that requires clarity, not conformity. However, this is also where wisdom matters. When clarity arrives suddenly, the instinct is to act immediately, to cut people off, to expose every realization, to burn bridges that suddenly feel outdated. But Aquarius doesn't rush destruction. It asks for observation. Let insight settle before action. Not every truth needs to be announced. Not every realization needs an audience. Some truths are meant to be protected while they evolve. This shift is about seeing clearly, not reacting quickly, because something even deeper is happening beneath all of this. A quiet rebellion is awakening in people who never thought of themselves as rebellious. Aquarius is the energy of liberation, not chaos, but self-direction. You begin questioning paths you followed simply because they were presented as normal, careers chosen for stability, beliefs inherited without examination, lifestyles built around expectation rather than fulfillment. Blind obedience dissolves when awareness arrives. You start noticing how often you said yes to avoid conflict, how many decisions were made from fear rather than alignment. And almost without effort, those fears lose their grip. You outgrow the version of yourself that was afraid to be different, not through force, but through understanding. This is the end of unconscious living. As this energy unfolds, another subtle transformation emerges. You develop an inner observer, a part of you that watches your reactions instead of being consumed by them. You pause more. You respond with intention. You understand yourself and others with greater compassion because you can see the patterns at play. This is self-mastery beginning quietly. And if you've stayed with this message until now, it's because something in it resonates deeper than logic. You didn't find this by accident. You're not watching this because you're bored. You're here because your mind is already moving in this direction, and recognition feels like relief. So give yourself permission to breathe. You don't need to rush clarity. You don't need to force answers. You don't need to become anything overnight. Stay curious. Stay honest. Stay open. This shift isn't here to confuse you, it's here to free you, and it has a way of leading you exactly where you're meant to go, right when you're ready to get there. What happens after the double Aquarius shift? The phase no one talks about. You might think that once clarity arrives, everything suddenly feels peaceful and resolved. But that's not how this shift works. What comes after the double Aquarius activation isn't instant comfort, it's adjustment. And this is where many people quietly struggle without realizing why. Once your mind has expanded, it doesn't contract again. You don't return to your old thinking. Instead, you're asked to live inside a new awareness, while the rest of your life slowly catches up. This is the phase where things feel subtly misaligned, not dramatically wrong, just off. Conversations don't land the same way. Goals you once chased lose their emotional charge. Even your motivation starts asking deeper questions like, why am I doing this? Instead of, how do I do this better? This is not stagnation, this is recalibration. Aquarius energy doesn't rush the body to match the mind. It lets the mismatch be felt so you can consciously redesign your life instead of unconsciously repeating it. That's why many people right now feel mentally ahead but physically still in old routines. You see the pattern, but you haven't moved yet. And that tension can feel frustrating if you don't understand it. You're not late. You're integrating. Another thing people notice during this phase is emotional neutrality. Not numbness, neutrality. Things that once triggered strong reactions now barely move you. You're not suppressing emotion, you're observing it. Aquarius creates emotional altitude. From higher ground, everything looks different. Problems shrink. Drama loses its grip. And while this can feel peaceful, it can also feel unfamiliar if you're used to intensity being your compass. Some people misinterpret this as disconnection. They wonder if something is wrong because they don't feel the same emotional highs and lows. But what's actually happening is emotional maturity. You're no longer being pulled by every stimulus. You're choosing what deserves your energy. And this is where relationships begin to shift quietly. Not all at once, not explosively, but energetically. You may notice that some people feel harder to reach, not because they changed, but because you did. The conversations loop, the same stories repeat, the same complaints recycle. And instead of feeling angry or superior, you feel done, complete, like you've already learned what that dynamic had to teach you. This doesn't mean you need to leave immediately. Aquarius is patient. It allows awareness before action. But once awareness arrives, it never leaves. And eventually, your life rearranges itself around what feels mentally honest. This is the phase where people begin choosing alignment over familiarity. And yes, it can feel lonely at times, not because you're alone, but because you're early. Early in seeing, early in understanding, early in outgrowing. Aquarius energy often isolates before it connects, not as punishment, but as preparation. You're being tuned to a frequency that can't coexist with noise. If you're in this phase, trust it. Nothing is being taken from you. Everything is being refined, because what comes next isn't withdrawal, it's redirection. Why this shift changes your future path, even if you don't act yet. There's a reason this double Aquarius shift doesn't demand immediate action. It's not here to push you into sudden decisions. It's here to quietly reprogram the direction your mind moves toward. And once that direction changes, your future begins reorganizing itself without force. After this shift, you'll notice that your curiosity changes. You're no longer interested in surface-level answers. You want systems, structures, the why behind things. Aquarius awakens the architect mind, the part of you that sees how ideas turn into realities and how invisible rules shape visible outcomes. You may feel drawn to learning things that give you autonomy rather than validation, knowledge that frees you, not impresses others. This is the beginning of self-directed living. You may also notice that your tolerance for wasted energy drops sharply. Tasks without meaning feel heavier. Goals without alignment feel draining. You begin asking better questions. Not, how do I succeed? But, what does success actually mean for me now? And once that question enters your awareness, your path starts shifting naturally. This is how Aquarius rewrites destiny, not through force, but through understanding. Another subtle change is how you relate to time. Urgency fades. You stop feeling rushed by external timelines. You no longer panic about being behind. Because when your mind expands, you realize most people are moving quickly in the wrong direction. Aquarius teaches you that clarity beats speed every time. This shift also alters how you manifest. Instead of chasing outcomes emotionally, you begin aligning mentally. You see cause and effect more clearly. You understand how belief shapes behavior, how behavior shapes reality. Manifestation becomes less about wishing and more about positioning. You start placing yourself in environments, conversations, and ideas that naturally support who you're becoming. And perhaps the most important transformation of all happens quietly. You stop asking for permission, not loudly, not rebelliously, internally. You no longer need approval to think differently, want differently, or imagine a life that doesn't match expectations. Aquarius energy dissolves the invisible authority figures inside your mind. The voices that told you what was realistic, acceptable, or allowed. Once those voices fade, your future opens. And here's the truth most people never hear. You don't need to know exactly where this is leading yet. Awareness always arrives before direction. Clarity comes before structure. Identity reshapes before life does. If you're trying to force certainty right now, you'll miss the intelligence of the process. This shift is not asking you to leap, it's asking you to see. And once you truly see, your choices will change without effort. So if you feel calmer, clearer, and strangely uninterested in rushing, that's alignment. If you feel mentally awake but externally still, that's preparation. And if you feel like your old future no longer fits, but the new one hasn't fully appeared, that's exactly where you're meant to be. You're not lost. You're recalibrating. And the direction your mind is moving now will shape your life in ways you'll only fully understand later. When you look back and realize this was the moment everything quietly changed.